Welcome to Life of Hair. My name's James Atkinson. Thank you for choosing to join into this week's episode. Now, I've mentioned in previous episodes that it really helps the algorithm if you guys watch as much or if not all of these videos as possible. It's a bit like telling your friends, the more you watch, the more the algorithm distributes these videos to a wider audience. So it would be massively helpful if you guys could watch as much of this episode as you can today. And if you'd like to take your Life of Hair education one step further than these videos, please do go down to the description below and join my Patreon. We do 2 lives a month over there, and we talk about all sorts of other things in much more detail than we do on these videos. So on today's video, Kylie is back now. You might remember Kylie from a few episodes ago where we took her natural hair and we put in some lighter pieces. We put in some kind of caramelly, darker caramel pieces into her hair. She's gone away, she's lived with it for a little while, and she wants to be blonder. Blonder. The addiction, the crack cocaine that is blonde hair, you know? And it doesn't matter who you are, once you go blonde, you go blonder and blonder and blonder. Now, actually, we did discuss going red, but I talked her into going blonder first, so it's partly my fault. So we won't totally blame Kylie for this one. But the reality is that if we go red, if we put red on this now, then it's going to be really difficult if Kylie decides to want to go blonder. So it's the correct and sensible way to approach these things is to go blonder first and then go red, should she want to, in the new year. So welcome back, Kylie. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Good stuff. Then last time we did her hair's grown a little bit. What we were doing today, we've had a little chat on the phone previously, and I'll give you a rundown of what we did last time. Obviously, I know the colour history this time, and we discussed with Kylie previously. She had no colour in her hair, so it was a really easy blank canvas to work with last time. This root area still has no colour in it, and there's obviously light and dark pieces going through these ends that you can probably see a little bit of. Some of the lighter pieces have faded now. The tone has faded. It's gone a little bit blonder, up to a level 9 in a lot of places. And then we've got our sort of more caramelly pieces, darker caramel pieces that are on a level 7. And then we've got natural level 4 roots. So we are going to go in with a highlighting technique today. We're going to do skip slice technique to kind of create chunkier vibes. We're going to do a little root tap to diffuse our skip slice technique so it looks lovely and blended. I really like chunky techniques. I'm a big chunky technique fan, but I think, you know, done in the right way, they can look great. If you do chunky techniques and then you don't go back in and perfect them with your toning technique, then they're always going to look horrendous. So it is really the emphasis on all of these chunky highlighting techniques are down to making sure that your toning is bang on. Now, I did a video all about toning stripy highlights. I'll be doing another one today, but on very curly hair in a slightly different manner. So hopefully that will give you a bit different insight into, you know, a different hair texture. And I think that's the really important thing, is that the repertoire of techniques that most people use on a day-to-day basis isn't that broad, and that's fine. What we do need to remember, though, is that on each hair type, each technique will look slightly different, and we'll do it slightly different each time. So if we're making a living as a commercial hairdresser, it's absolutely fine to keep repeating ourselves, you know, because we're just making a living. We're not trying to be creative necessarily. You can if you want, of course. But the reality of commercial hairdressing is that on a day-to-day basis, we're probably doing the same 5, 6, 7 hair colours over and over again. We're probably only repeating ourselves with 3 or 4 different hair cuts. And I think as we go into what will be my new digital academy, we're really going to emphasise the simplicity of just taking a very structured approach to the techniques that we use and how that can really optimise our days. So, without anything else being said, because I love to talk and loads of people of you comment and say, James, you don't half waffle, which is fine. I love it. I'm a hairdresser. Come on, waffling's paid my bills for 20 years. You know? So what we're going to do is we're going to get on, put this skip slice technique in, and then we'll come back and tone it, and then we'll take you through the journey as we go. Okay, so simple starting point, natural parting, left-hand side. Kylie generally, every time I've seen her anyway, she has her hair parted here. So we're going to go through the parting, down to the back of the ear, unless she's got her hair in a little bun on top of her head, or wrapped up in a cloth. Yeah. Then it's always on that side, as far as I'm aware. So we're good to go with that. Pop a clip in. We do exactly the same thing on the opposite side, not rocket science, just continue the section on through to the other side and push the hair forward. Stick a clip in it, and then we'll split the hair into two down the centre back and just work the hair away. Perfect. Now we're going to go much closer to the roots this time than we did last time, so it's going to look a whole lot blonder. The closer we get to those roots, the more oomph we get in the hair, and personally actually, you know, quite like really, you know, striking techniques on curly hair like this. So we're going to start work on this quadrant. Now I've recently discovered I have a habit of starting on the left hand side at the back. I'd never realised that until I was watching myself back in several videos recently, and I always start on this left hand side. I don't think that helps any, but always start in the back because you can always wash the back out, and that's why I start in the back. But yeah, don't ask me. If you've ever noticed that, let me know in the comment section, because it was a personal observation from the other day. Okay, so looking at our section here now, we've got a section that's probably inch deep roughly. We're going to come down the section and we're going to weave from around 50%. Now what we're going to do is look at each of these sections, and where we've got darker pieces through the ends, they're the pieces we're going to take. Okay, we're not going to take these lighter pieces. We're going to leave these lighter pieces on the end, and we're going to take the blonde back up towards the root area, and we're going to remove some of the more caramelly pieces within the hair. Otherwise this could look a bit strange. E.g. we'll have lots of blonde and then some warm caramelly pieces, which could look a bit random. And we're also going to be using a skip slicing technique. Skip slice is 1 centimetre of hair with 1 centimetre of gap and 1 centimetre of hair. That is how we would define a skip slice section. In with our foil. We don't have to be too worried about blending these sections, to be honest, because we are going to go in with a root shadow, root stretch technique. We do want to make sure though, and this is something that I stress in another video previously, is that we want to get high enough up towards the root area to ensure that we have an area where we can stretch over and get rid of any demarcation. What I see a lot is people thinking to themselves, right, I'm going to do a root stretch. They paint it where they want their root stretch to finish, or their root shadow, or whatever the technique. You need to have an area of which you can transition the colour through, and that's really important to remember, and it's something that I think is ultimately overlooked. You want to just go that little 1 inch even, just higher than you want your desired finished result to be. So that's something to remember. Now with the section sizes, we're not going to pack out these foils. We're not going to do them, you know, 1 millimetre apart, or even 5 millimetres apart. And the main reason for that is that we still want contrast and texture in Kylie's hair. We don't want to turn Kylie's hair all blonde. So we do need to think about where, when, how we place these sections within the hair. It's really important that we don't overdo it. And I'll have said it a million times at this point, but highlights are highlights, and all over colours are all over colours. The whole point of a highlight is to create texture and movement and accent the natural colour, not to change the natural colour. Now these sections are a little bit deep, so what I'm going to do is elevate my section, come in through the back of the section, and just cut off the back of the section, just to make the sections a little bit slimmer. I don't want really chunky pieces in there. I just want fairly chunky pieces. In fact, this end one here is still a little chunky. So we'll just cut the back off that, pop the old pintail in, and then pop our foil in. Saturation is king as always. Saturate, get plenty of product onto the hair, and that will give you optimum lifting speed and give you optimum results also. Make sure you get plenty of product onto that hair. It is super important that you do, and that you've worked each strand of these pieces of hair from side to side so that you've nicely and evenly spread the product throughout each of the sections. Lovely. Take your blonde ends, if you've got any blonde ends in there, move them to the side. Make sure that you don't press them onto the hair that you've just put bleach onto. Obviously it won't do them any favours to lighten them too much. You know, some of these ends are pretty light already, so we need to be careful of those. When you've got this much hair in a foil, you've really got to go in with the product. You know, big scoop of product and work that product into the hair. You vertical brush strokes, pushing the product through the section, just making sure that saturation is bang on, because if that saturation is not bang on, this will turn out an absolute pig's ear. So you've got to make sure that you get that product worked through the hair to get that even lift. Now if you've got any brown pieces like that, you can let those pieces fold over into the colour that you've just saturated, and you can saturate those pieces. But the blonde pieces that you can see on this foil, we want to really make sure that they don't end up in all that bleach, because they will fry. I used to watch a YouTube channel called Will It Fry. It was so good. They just basically deep fried anything and everything and then see if they could eat it. Loved it. You should check it out. Will It Fry? I'm sure it's still around.
What things did they fry?
All sorts, everything. They'd like an industrial deep fat fryer that was like a molten pot of oil, and they just used to put all sorts of stuff in it. Right, we'll come back when I've got to the top here. Right then, so we have got to this top triangle. Now, if you've watched my videos before, you will ultimately know that this is where I get to most of the time when we're working with two sections in the back and we're working diagonally. We end up with, sorry Kylie, pull your hair, just classic hair pull there. Two triangles like that. Now what I tend to do is either work up those individually, or in this particular instance I've merged them into one triangle, so it goes diagonally that way and diagonally that way. What we're going to do is take this section and we're going to split it into two roughly even sized sections, and then we're going to treat each of those exactly as we've done all the way through. So we're just going to do our skip slice section, making sure that we're not digging too deep because we don't want them to be too chunky, and we're also trying to hit the brown bits within the ends and leave as much of the blonde as possible. Again, this one's a little thick, so we'll just cut the back off it. Now there are blonde bits in this because there's a little bit more blonde in the sections as we work up the hair, but that's okay. We'll just avoid overlapping the blonde. Remember, just got to get that product down. I can't say this enough. The reason I can't say it enough is because I've just witnessed so many times people not using enough lightener to get the job done well. I mean, you'll get the job done if you don't put enough lightener on there, but it's not necessarily going to be to the standard or the levels of lift that you require to get a satisfactory result for your client. So we're just feeding the product down there onto those two darker pieces. We're trying to avoid these lighter pieces as much as possible, and just again working that with brush strokes diagonally from side to side, just like that too. So again, just make a quick assessment of what we've got in this section. Brown piece on the outside, no real brown piece here, maybe that little bit out the center there. Got quite a high blonde piece on this side. So pick up the brown piece, pick up this piece. We're sort of ultimately left with that piece. So we've now got a section where we've got more blonde on the left hand side, we've got less blonde in the center, and then we've got a darker piece. So we're going to sort of paint our products on diagonally. We just want to check the depth of this section. Again, this section is just a fraction thick, and it's very easy to do on curly hair. It's just to keep picking up sections that are slightly too big. So it's almost a prerequisite that you go back in and you just check that the density of that section's okay. Again, saturate heavily with your product. There we go, just avoiding as much of that blonde as possible. Just making sure that we've got all of the brown pieces out of those ends as well. Fold it again. Good stuff, and I'll see you on the front. Okay, so 1 quadrant to go. It's quite a quick technique, this as well. That's the joy of this technique, I think, really, or one of the joys of it, is that, you know, from an application standpoint, you know, it's easily under an hour. You've got a lot of hair to deal with here. You don't have to sort of panic that you need half a day to do this technique in. When you're in the salon environment, you can just get on with your day normally, and you know, that's the joy of doing the skip slice as well. You're covering a lot of ground pretty quickly. And when we're doing highlights, you know, I think we tend to get caught in the trap of just doing so many foils that these techniques take so long. And it's a little absurd, really, how long you can take to do a set of foils or a set of highlights, you know, because ultimately doing too much work and also undercharging for that work as well. You know, if you're putting in foils with 2mm spacings, even over the distance of a half head, it's one of those things where you're putting in probably twice as many foils as you should be, really. And I know obviously people have opinions, but, you know, and say, well, that's just the way I do it. Well, that might just be the way you do it, and that's fine, but you are putting a lot of foil in someone's head, you are putting a lot of colour on someone's hair. And if you're not charging, you know, a high price for that amount of work, then you are selling yourself short. And I think if everyone takes a really hard look at themselves and like truly evaluates how much time, effort and energy they're putting into something and what they're getting back for it, they'll probably quickly realise that actually they're doing themselves little to no favours with their techniques. And I've come across that a lot in my time as a hairdresser, where people are ultimately selling themselves short. They just don't realise it. So again, we just really simply work up through this section. Right, and so at the top here, and one of the things that you've got to do is remember that what you don't want is 2 sections touching each other. So before you get to your final section, what I recommend is you just take a little slither of hair like that, and you just make a little bit of a barrier between the 2 sections, because if you get 2 sections touching one another, it can look a bit badgerish. So we want to be avoiding that as much as possible. Now we can take our section, subdivide this section into 2, put our foils into here, put our foils into here, and that little slither of hair there will protect it from being too stripy at the top there. But obviously, you know, when we put the root shadow in and stuff like that, that will help a little to create that sort of more diffused root area. Also, right around the front hairline here, I'm not necessarily putting my first weave in bang on the hairline, just so that we don't have, if the hair's worn up, we don't look like we've got these stripes of colour going backwards. So that's something to bear in mind as you work through these techniques, because Kylie does tie her hair up quite a lot and has it slicked back quite a lot, and if we did them bang on the front hairline with the gaps in between the sections the size that they are, she would look like a honeybee. Fact. Not saying looking like a honeybee is a problem to if you're a bee. I don't think Kylie would appreciate it. So this is our final section here at the top, and just treat it exactly like we did all the other sections. Just get plenty of product on it. And there we have it. Nice and easy. Job done. Right, this is the lift in the back so far. So we are at pale yellow, sort of level 9. I'm going to give it 2 more minutes, and then I'm going to take the back off before I take the front off. This is just probably the best way to do it in terms of overall condition. I know so many people that just let the back process while the front catches up. All you're doing is damaging this hair at the back and creating more. And there we have the finished result. A fantastic result, in my opinion. I really, really, really like this. I hope Kylie likes it too. Well, she said the colour's nice a minute ago, just as it was dry, so I'm assuming we've got a result. Kylie, any good?
It's lovely.
she had to say that. She'll never come back again if she didn't. And then toned it with a level 9, level 10 combination, just so they didn't sink down. One thing you've got to bear in mind is when you're colouring hair that's very curly like this, it's very porous, toners can sink down quite quickly. So it's always good to stand and observe them and make sure that they don't drop down to brown. Or doing that root tap, it just changed it. You know, as soon as you put the root tap on, you know, it made such a big difference to the way that the colour looked at the root area. Obviously, it looked so stripy previously, and that's just really softened and diffused. Now, this toner at the roots will fade a little bit. Remember, all colour fades, and you'll see a little bit more of the lightness appear through there. But I think that would be a really good thing as time goes on. But yeah, super pleased with the result. Hope you've enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed it, please do hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you're new here, and don't forget there's new. You always wanted to do that.
Give it a thumbs up.
You've definitely got to do it now. Kylie's done that, and and I'll see you again for another episode very, very soon.
Just make fashion videos.
That's all right. I'll keep that.